The focus is, I think it's crucial to your survival as a business owner and whatever business you're trying to do is making sure that you are laser focused on what your goal is.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Automated Lawyer Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John Fritz, and I'm joined with my co-host, Dan Schnurbusch. Dan, what's going on today?
Oh, John, just getting ready for the Halloween bonanza. We were talking about, I think I have like 5 different Halloweens and trunk or treats lined up. So it's going to be a very, Halloween intense week here, but hopefully we'll at least get some good candy out of it. We'll see. But how about yourself?
Yeah, very, very similar. I think we have 2 trunk or treats and an actual Halloween. How do you guys handle the candy overload? I mean, we usually let our kids eat candy, like some very limited candy on Halloween, or on the trunk or treat night. But then once Halloween is over, it basically goes up into the cabinet and is dispersed out in single servings,
Yeah.
sporadic, throughout the years. So
Yeah. It's I think that is kind of the modus operandi of the millennial generation. We're all kind of in uh, remission or kind of recovering from being 90s children where we were allowed to do whatever we want with our candy. I don't
oh
know,
yeah,
but my wife and I joke about this, because we go to Halloween and we get bags full of stuff and we come back and we dump it on the floor and we just sit there and eat candy until we were sick. And but yeah, we're very much, you get a couple pieces on Halloween night and then it's going up in the Halloween bucket and you'll get some periodically. But it's wild just trying to teach those lessons about sugar. I don't think anybody knew that sugar was like anything other than like glorious health food in 1996. But it is what it is. But so that's what
absolutely.
so, interesting stuff been going on this week. Today, we're planning to talk a little bit about this idea of what are you trying to build? Like, from a firm perspective, from a tech perspective, like getting clarity around. And I think it's just as important in like your firm as it is in your tech focus on a more narrower level, as it is in your life, as it is in your family. Like you have to have some degree of clarity around where you're going, or you end up spending a lot of time rowing in the wrong direction or building things that are a waste of your time or that you won't end up using or that you didn't even want when you get to the end. So I'm excited for that interesting conversation. Before we get into it, I wanted to just had a very interesting news tidbit that came up this week. We have in the country, we now have our first AI multimillionaire. And this is a ridiculous story. I guess what happened is somebody decided it would be a good idea to take a bunch of AI agent chatbots and put them into one chat room together. And apparently what happens when you leave lots and lots of these chatbots in one room together for an extended period of time is that, at least in this case, they create a cult. And in this case, what they latched
Very normal.
Yeah, in this case, it's kind of probably might what happened with people too. But they latched onto, and I hesitate to even reference this. 90s kids will know what I'm talking about. But if you remember the goatse meme from the early 2000s that went around Reddit and the internet, disgusting. Don't look it up. But in any event, the AI chatbots latched onto this and created a cult around the goatse singularity. And so what they were arguing all this stuff about how this was going to be the salvation on earth. And somehow one of the bots got access to the Twitter API and created a new chatbot. And for the past several weeks has been just trash posting nonsense about the goatse singularity. And simultaneously, somehow one of the bots, nobody's quite sure if this was done dynamically by one of the bots or if it was an outside person helping them, but they set up a new cryptocurrency called Goatseus Maximus. And of course, the AI cult community it kind of spammed Twitter and turned it into a meme coin. And now, like a couple of weeks later, this coin is now worth over $800 million in market capitalization. And a small chunk of it is owned by an AI agent in a crypto wallet that only it has access to. And now that currency is worth about $10 million. So we have a AI agent, the first non-human uh, uh, quasi-intelligent agent that has a multi-million dollar net worth. Very bizarre, but I thought that was worth sharing because I find it just hysterical and also bizarre and terrifying. So, what do you think, John?
Yeah, that is hilarious. You have to think though that there's somebody out there that is the puppet master of these bots, right? And that he or she has access to those funds at this point, and is probably either selling it to actually, make money off of it or not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and nobody's sure like who's like what's the IRS going to do about this? Like if it gets sold, like how do you tax a how do you tax an AI agent? And so the
I
interesting.
don't think you do they I mean, yeah, I guess you just voluntarily open up, like, the IRS's, like, tax forms API to them, and then they can, it can create its own file its own returns?
There
I
you
don't
go.
know.
There you go. I bet they need to get a little freer with their API. It'd be nice. But all right. Well, anyway, so with that kind of interesting tidbit out of the way, what are you trying to build? So I think about this a lot, and for a long time it was something that I struggled with in terms of getting clear on the firm I was trying to build, on the technology I was trying to implement, like why I went through a long period of shiny objects, and I know you did too. Um, what tell John, what tell tell me about your story. Like how did you get to where you are now and settled? You mentioned this shiny object phase. How did you get where you're at, and have you gotten any more clarity on what you're trying to do and build, and tell us a little about that.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, my story starts out with, years back when, I started my own law firm, and I was doing 3 different practice areas, right? I was doing, uh, plaintiff's personal injury work and estate planning, and then I started doing probate, and then, so there was the problem with that was is that I was trying to build basically 3 different law firms in one, right? So, because it's 3 different practice areas, all have different nuances and different needs when it comes to tech, right? So, I was kind of all over the place, and, 2 years ago, obviously, my story when it comes to, decided to transition my firm into, 95% of my firm is probate work, right? The other 5% is a little bit of, so we do still do some co-counseling at, and some personal injury, litigation type stuff, but, 95% of what we do is probate work. So, I think niching down when it comes to my practice areas really solved a lot of those problems when it comes to, is this piece gonna help me? This tech piece gonna help my firm grow or build? And once I was able to niche down, then I could get kind of really focused. And I think I was going in a lot of different directions, prior to that, not just with shiny objects, but with, um, you know, I started building I got into document automation, or like really heavy, and then because I recognized the benefits of it, right? I mean, there's this incredible time save. I mean, we were saving like, 12 hours a case, on these cases, and just, being able to build out the system. So, I was building out all these automations systems for different things, and then, then I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna this is great. I'm gonna, use this tool to, sell it, for a very basically nominal cost to other lawyers to use because the value is so great." But, um, once I really, got my focus down and was like, "Hey," and it was really, what I had to ask myself that question really, multiple times, what am I trying to build? And I'm really trying to build, the number one probate law firm in Missouri. Like that's what my goal is, right? And so everything has to be, you know, everything has to be funneled through that specific vision, right? Especially when it comes to the tech piece. But um, I decided to shut down my other automation stuff, my consulting automation stuff I was doing, right? Basically reduce the client facing piece, or trying to, let other lawyers use it and just use it internally to basically be the backbone of my number one goal, which is, my probate law firm. So um yeah, I think that I mean, the focus is, I think it's crucial to your survival as a business owner, and whatever business you're trying to do is making sure that you are laser focused on what your goal is.
Yeah.
So, and so I know that, Dan, you obviously have your law firm, and you do consulting, automation consulting work, as well. And so, what about you when it comes to, what are you trying to build right now? Or I know we talked about lifestyle and stuff like that, but what are you trying to build in the macro? And then, what are you trying to build kind of, on a more monthly basis?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's something that I've kind of wrestled with for a long time because I think for the first couple years um, of the practice, I was really interested in building this big firm that was going to be, I was going to make a ton of money, and but I don't know that I had a reason for that. I just thought it was kind of interesting and a fun idea. It wasn't really until I started listening more to um, I think Tyson and Jim in the Maximum Lawyer podcast were having a period where they were talking a lot about vision and the importance of. Jim talks about the importance of the woo woo, and I started thinking more about the woo woo and where what is the point of all this? Where am I trying to go? Because I kept fighting and building things and getting frustrated with different pieces, and is this what I'm doing? And finding myself working on specific kinds of things, and I learned a lot about what I actually enjoy doing in that time frame, and started thinking, well, what do I actually need? Like, what do I want to be happy? And came to this realization that I want to spend time with my family. I want to have a lot of pressure off. I don't want to be stressed all the time. I want to have a freedom of time and freedom of relationships and freedom of money. I want to be able to kind of spend my time and allocate my energies and explore passion projects and do fun things if I want to. And I need my brain needs that ability to kind of change and with flex on a dime in some cases. And so I realized that what was going to be a good fit for me was more a more lifestyle focused law firm. You see a lot of these conversations come up where it's like, well, are you going to build kind of a lifestyle brand, or are you going to kind of build this big empire, giant law firm, and make millions of dollars? And I fell in with Lawyer on the Beach and Regina Edwards, and it's just her and one paralegal, and I was just completely enamored with that, and started trying to model that. I was like, maybe that's more my style, and then started trying to, like you, I started doing too many things at the beginning. I was doing estate planning and probate, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is kind of too many things. And
Yeah.
because it is, like, yeah, you're absolutely right. It is two different businesses with different tech needs, different workflows, different processes, different templates, everything, different marketing. But so I kind of danced around with different software for years. We were in Lawmatics and Locus at first, and then moved into Monday.com, thinking that was going to be the answer to my problems of reaching that next level of automation. And turned out that was not the case. It was learned a whole lot during like that 2-year period about software and automation and why we weren't getting to where I wanted us to get. And just kind of had some revelations. And so everything became geared around that idea of building a lifestyle firm that I can spend, today, like 10, 15 hours a week in, to keep it going while still generating all the money that we need as a family. And that kind of led itself to Airtable, and using that as kind of the data source for all of our automation, and kind of hitting a level where I could feel like I could automate just about anything. And that kind of got me to where I am today in terms of what am I trying to build. And going forward, it's really just, I want to keep that going and keep the law firm just cash flowing, and seeing what I can do to continue to aggressively automate and reduce the time spent as much as possible, and just leave the rest of the time to play around. If that's consulting, if it's learning to code, if it's just spending more time with my family or exercising more, or whatever it is. That's kind of my vision of it, and my focus and my why. That's kind of a long answer to your question. But
No,
that's my story.
that's perfect. Yeah. It's a gr and I think that there's a lot of law firm owners, that are in your same boat, right? I mean, and then when it comes to, starting out a law firm, people don't they don't start with what is, that premise of what am I trying to build? It simply is, how do I bring in clients and make money, right? And so you kind of start and then you know,
Hmm.
and then it's simply you're just adding on stuff as, kind of as an ancillary thought, like, okay, now I need to add a case management. Now I need to add this, but you're not really thinking about the big picture, and it's hard to do that. Um, I know I devote a lot of, um, you know, you know, um, say gratitude or at least appreciation uh, to Jim and Tyson at Maximum Lawyer because, I was when I basically got plugged into that network, right? They would just, these episodes would talk about over and over and over about the importance of niching down. Jim says every single time I niche down, I made more money,
Yeah.
and at the time I was doing way too many things, and I just thought, well, this is starting to make a whole lot of sense, right? And
Yeah.
so, like the niching down and just like focusing was a game changer for me personally. And then once I had one practice area to focus
Yeah.
on, I started, really, you know, diving deep into what am I trying to build, right? And for me, it's kind of twofold, right? I'm trying to build, we have one of our core values, which is, uh, you know, we have or create an unbeatable client experience, right? So we focus on 100% on client experience at our firm, and so when you have that baseline of client experience being the best state of the art, then it's like, okay, what tech do I use for that client
Yeah.
experience, right? What do I put into this theme? And so that's kind of how we built our tech stack around, which was how do I create that unbeatable client experience? And that's been really important because we're not just adding tech for the sake of adding tech or for the sake of um, having a new cool feature that the firm offers, right? It's all about the client experience. And then also, scalability and profitability are really, really important as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for us the tech piece, and I know it's different for every firm because I think Tyson was on a couple of weeks ago and talking about how tech played a role, but a big impact for them, he was saying, was getting the right people in the right seats, and I would concur that that is also important because one of the things that I suffered from early on was building these amazing automated systems, but then I didn't really have a reliable people to push the buttons. So and myself included, I am not a reliable people to push buttons. So it's one of those things where you have to have these things in tandem, but when you have them both together, it can produce some really, really, really helpful and positive results. So what you know, how tell me, I know you've been wanting to you've had some interesting thoughts on this kind of scalability and profitability, you know, uh, line of thought in when it comes to technology and just kind of the growth of the firm in general. Um, how do you when you're looking at technology, and deciding, like whether this is a good thing to add, is this useful, is this going to be worth the money? Is this how do you think through that process of is this a shiny object versus is this actually going to help us in a serious way?
Yeah, and so I think it comes down to, really spending that time. My business coach, calls it strategic think time, right? And you should have this strategic think time, once a week where you sit down and you're just basically just writing down your thoughts about, different ideas on being able to grow the firm or adding new tech or what's important, right? To that quiet time. But um I think a lot of law firm owners, including myself in the past, um, you know, we've used tech or has tried to use tech as a kind of, this special, like golden key or something that will solve your problems, right? And most of the time, and Jim and Tyson talk about this a lot, especially Jim, in the Maximum Lawyer. But most of the problems that lawyers have as law firm owners is cash flow problems, right? they're not bringing enough cases in, they're not, pushing money through the system fast enough. Um, and so that's like this that's the real problem is cash flow.
Right.
And like I said, I've gone through that with my own firm, right? When it comes to, cash flow issues. And it's like, how do we solve this? And so you 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 always, and since if you love tech like we do, right? It's like, oh, well, if I get a new case management system, or if I get a new whatever it is, add more automation, right? It's gonna solve this problem, and it doesn't. It's because it's a different fundamental problem.
Um,
So I think that it's okay to, be interested in the shiny objects, and, and demo them and review them and whatnot, but at the end of the day, you have to be really laser focused on what you're spending your time on and what you're spending your money on when it comes to tech, and is it really gonna solve your problem?
yeah.
And maybe you're and like I said, for me, the problem um was not tech related at all, but was using tech, to try to be the cure of that issue,
Yeah.
and it didn't work. And then, until you solve that other issue, right? It doesn't really matter if you have the best tech in the world, and you have every single fully thing, automated, or if you have no tech at all and you're at paper files, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter because it has nothing to do with what your core problem is,
Yeah.
or what most law firms have when it comes to, issues,
Yeah.
when it comes to growing. So
No, I think that's completely true. And there was a period, especially early on, where we went through that too, or where I went through that too, which is, trying to use technology to solve problems that aren't tech problems, which is like
yeah,
name in the cash flow is a very good example, which is, um, you know, a lot of attorneys focus heavily on the fulfillment, on the being a lawyer part. Like I can write a good brief, or I can show up to court, or I can put on a great trial, or whatever. But like what is easy to overlook, especially when you're first getting started, is like the fact that none of that matters. And those are all related to the technology piece, because like technology plays into, fulfillment and operations, especially, but it also plays into the main issue, which is like you need cases. Like you got to have cases, you got to close them, you got to get people to call you on the phone, or email or whatever, and you have to sell them on why they should hire you, and then get them to give you money. And technology can like help with that. Like it can help maybe send some emails automatically, or it can help you, run ads or something like that. But at the end of the day, like that is step number one, is getting a pipeline filled and getting people on your calendar, or the rest of it just doesn't matter. So that's totally, and the more that you kind of, up to a certain point, you definitely have to prioritize that no matter what you're trying to build. If you're trying to build a lifestyle business or a giant firm or whatever, like until you're getting people in the door and on the calendar, like it doesn't matter how smooth their experience is going to be. So that's definitely true. Definitely true.
and when it comes to, I mean, for me personally, I'm really not, I would say, hard on myself, but I take a lot of time now when it comes to making tech decisions, right? When it comes to, how am I spending my time? And does it go towards my goal of, being the number one probate law firm in Missouri, and not just the largest probate law firm, but, I would say by, the highest rated client experience probate law firm. And then, and also this number of cases as well. So the client experience is always important, right? Um, but recently, when I started getting into the custom GPT stuff with, creating Eleanor, right? And I've talked about, about that whole venture, which is it's amazing, and it's really fun to see what it can do. But I had to sit down and go, why am I building this? Like, this is a cool tech piece, and I'm going to spend a lot of time working with this, but why, right? And I came up with, you know, um, that decision tree. I was always trying to. I had this idea of just having an automated decision tree, right? Where my intake person could say, okay, it's, it's an estate over 40,000. Then I go here, and then here are my options. And then there's debts. So now I go here, and here are my options. And then there's, we're past the 1 year mark, and here are my options, right? So basically what happened was I was able to, use Eleanor and build Eleanor to start being that decision tree for me so that I can help my intake people, right? When it comes to um, providing a general pathway of and then signing cases up, right? To come into our system. So, 'cause my number one goal right now is to help more people in St. Louis and the surrounding counties, right? When it comes to probate cases. So,
Yeah.
how do I bring in more clients? How am I helping more people? And how am I using tech to supplement that piece, right? So that's Eleanor's number one purpose, and that's how I'm using her and training her to drive that number one goal. And so I think that whatever your current goal is right now when it comes to your law firm, do you want to add more cases? Do you want to work on marketing? Do you want um, your do you want to work on your client experience? No matter what it is, don't add tech unless it aligns with that specific goal, right? And make sure that it makes sense for that goal and not just adding something for the sake of adding it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so easy. There's so many neat things out there, especially when you start getting into, the AI space, because they're seeing startups flying out like left and right. But even in just like the traditional like technology, it's very easy to be like adding a new tool as soon as you're like, oh, that would be really nice to have. And then all of a sudden you're juggling another monthly subscription and how many user seats do you need and how are you going to train everybody on using this new thing? And, so it's, and a lot of times people's existing software can do a lot of the things that they're interested in doing. Um, and even more traditional tools like Clio, for example, which is a very kind of, I'll call them like the 700-ton gorilla. They're kind of the institutional, at this point, a much more institutional vendor. And, for the longest time, one of my criticisms was it doesn't do anything. Like it stores your case and it has 1,000 integrations, but you can't automate anything really within the system. And I've since learned that that's not entirely true. And if you explore their make.com connection and their Zapier connection and their API, you can actually do a lot of really cool stuff with Clio that I had no idea. And so now I'm a lot less critical of the platform. They have probably one of the most developed APIs of any legal software on the market right now. Which, we've talked about APIs before, which means that you can do a lot of stuff from in terms of automating in and out of the system. So take a look at what you already got. You know what I mean? Because what you already got can a lot of times help fight some of that shiny object. But
That's a great point.
yeah,
I mean, that's a really good point, and especially, and it's again, I think it's that a lot of law firm owners are, including myself, are, you know, you're looking to fix a problem, right? And you're looking for you need something new to fix that problem. Like, you need, it's gonna be so much better when I have this new thing, right? And it's like the grass is always greener, right? Approach, but you know, I think that once you get more established as a law firm owner and, after a certain number of years, you've kind of gone through like the trial and error of everything, right? Of doing all these things and them not working out as the way you think they're going to work out.
yeah,
And then you get a certain level of maturity as a business owner, right? And then you kind of, you're much more likely to take the more conservative approach of like, hey, like what is the actual problem I'm trying to solve, and can I solve it with my current without increasing costs or time, right? And it took me a while to get to that point, right, where that level of maturity when it comes to making those decisions and saying, "Oh, can I is there" or you can maybe say, "Is there a Zapier? Is there a Zapier or Zap I can use and use another very small piece of tech that's free," right?
yeah,
I mean, you don't need to pay for tech, just because, people think like, "Oh, if I add this new expensive thing on, it's gonna be a game changer," and I think some of the stuff is true. I mean, like, for example, like, tacking on, case status onto Filevine for me was a game changer in our client experience, and we had built out something before that was similar, but it was disjointed, it wasn't as smooth, it didn't have automations built in, right? So, for us, that was like a big door opening to this new next level
yeah,
of client experience. So, it does exist, but I would say that's probably, um, maybe an outlier on the
Yeah.
spectrum of the effect that it will have, but
Yeah. Yeah, and we've taken a appropriately pessimistic, or not pessimistic, but cautious take so far. But that being said, like there are definitely times to kind of give the other side the argument for a minute. There are definitely times where tech implementation does make a ridiculous difference, because like I can say like our shift to Airtable has been night and day, like coming off of Monday.com, and just because now we have a data model, we have a system that where our data connects in a way that makes sense. I can fetch in any data that we need. It has kind of been the Rosetta Stone of kind of opening up communication between everything that we've got going on, in terms of, the automation now is ridiculous. I mean, we can turn out uh, sets of documents and have them mailed out in single clicks, and whole onboarding packages, and letters are generated as the case goes through the phases, and as the court sends us notifications, we get AI to parse it, and all of that is enabled by Airtable as our database backend. So there are definitely times where, but that just kind of ties into this comment about just being deliberate and careful, and making sure that what you're doing is actually going to deliver more value, rather than just be like a waste of time, and a different set of problems. There are plenty of times when it is just a different set of problems you're buying into. Um, all right.
yeah.
To
Yeah.
Before I forget about this, to circle back to something you said about niching down, like a lot of this, I think, gets so much clearer when you get more focused on like what you're trying to do. Because like if you're trying to run like 3 different practice areas, like, and you're evaluating a piece of tech, you're like, well, that could be good for this practice area, but it's not as helpful for this one. Like, if you only have one to focus on, like all of a sudden that rubric or that metric of like, is this going to help? I think becomes a lot easier to make those assessments a lot quicker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's been at least true for us. And I'm sure it's been true for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, the niching down is crazy, when it comes to, I mean, not just the level, I mean, the streamlining of only having one practice area, right? And being able to craft everything around one set of processes, right? For each different type of case within that practice area. And, for probate, I mean, I think we have like 7 or 8 different SKUs. Like that's all we have. I mean, every single case fits into one of those SKUs. And so we're not talking about 50 different, offerings where it's really hard to automate, right? It's really hard to come up with standard operating procedures for each one. Um, I mean, it's probably very similar for somebody who does like, personal injury work, right? They have car accidents. Maybe they have, um, maybe they do, nursing home cases, or, or maybe they specialize in, trucking cases, right? Maybe they have 8 categories, or 5 or 6 or even 10, right? Of different case types that are easily scalable and templatable, right? When it comes to that. But um, I think when it comes to the niching down piece, yeah, I mean, just the clarity that you have, when it comes to actually, being able to scale is crazy. I mean, you only have one thing to focus on, and yeah, it just makes everything so much easier from a as from mental, reducing stress from a mental standpoint, right? I mean, even when it comes to like the estate planning and probate stuff, right? It's like estate planning is constantly evolving. There's constantly new laws and tax laws, all these different things that you have to stay on top of. Um, and so, and not that, so just being able to be the expert in one space. And I know a lot of people can be an expert in, you know, probate and estate planning, right? But there's still a lot there, right? Or they can be experts in, you know, y- I would argue that, clients want experts in one area, right? They want a guy to go to for X. They want the personal injury guy. They don't want the personal injury guy who also does family law, right? They want an expert, and that's, I mean, if you think about it as as a consumer, right? You have somebody who has multiple offerings. or it's somebody who only does one offering really well, right? You're always going to migrate to that expert in that space, and you're going to put your money there because you know that their number one goal is to just simply be all knowing and be the best at one thing, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think it spills over way beyond tech too into, like you mentioned, the client, uh, from the client perspective, but also from like the perspective of referral partners, for example. Like, let's say somebody's thinking about referring you a case. Like, are they going to refer you to, John, the guy that does only probate? Or are they going to refer you to, Jim Smith, the guy who does injury and probate and family law? And, oh, I handled a toxic tort once or whatever. Um, from that perspective, if you know both John and Jim, it makes that decision as a referral partner a lot easier as to where you send them. Not just because John is going to stand out in your mind more, but he's also going to seem like a more trustworthy person to send your referrals to. Um, and from a broader marketing perspective, like I think it was Alex Hormozy's wife, Layla Hormozy, who is a brilliant in my opinion, a brilliant businesswoman in her own right. Um, I was watching a video of hers, and she was talking about how, in her opinion, you should try to, in defining your business niche and your avatar client, you should try to pull, I think she said $10 million out of a particular avatar before you start adding extra avatars, because you can't really, you have to, invest resources in that one avatar person, to a pretty significant extent before you really build out the processes to the point that what you're offering is, 5-star quality, that the marketing is stable and reliable, that you're not going to have, one channel isn't going to collapse the next, 6 months or the next year. That might work this year, but is it going to work next year? You have to get to know that person and how to market to them, to have it, and figuring out the channels that work well to get in front of those people. And unless you're staying focused on one thing, it's really hard to do that when you're juggling all those different channels and different avatars, because it really does affect everything. And you certainly can, like, you can get to that point, but like, do it one at a time, in my opinion. Like, identify one avatar and build that stack. Like, here's our probate system, works great. Right now that we've gotten that ironed out, we're going to move on to, and just do it piece by piece. At least I think that's the best way to go.
Can you hear me okay still?
I can hear you. I lost your video though.
All right. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what's happening here.
There we go.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it's it's always a challenge when it comes to, um, getting to that 5-star level, client experience, right? And you got to start with just the basics, and even getting to that point, it's expensive. And I've talked about this before, but like adding all these tech pieces in to have an unbeatable client experience can get costly. And I know you probably have a similar experience, but you most of your stuff is automated through, kind of do it yourself, custom built out automations with Zapier and Make and all this stuff, right? Um, I use I'm more of a outside the box user who adds those custom automations to kind of supplement and connect and do that. So as opposed to building from scratch. But um, either way, when it comes to building that client experience, it gets costly,
Yeah.
and so it's you have to basically establish yourself. I mean, establishing yourself as an expert in your in your practice area, right? Takes time too. It's You're building a reputation. I mean, I've only been doing probate only for 2 years, and I'm starting to gain traction, and and when it comes to other lawyers in St. Louis saying, "Oh, hey, John, you might want to call John for this case," type thing. And that's been 2 years, and we're barely scratching the surface of that kind of, lawyer to lawyer referral type network.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of work to do in that space. So it takes time, but it's so much easier to market when you're the guy. I mean, like when I talk to people at anywhere I go, they say, "Well, what type of lawyer are you?" And I say, "I'm a probate lawyer." And they go, "Oh, okay." And you get that kind of that, "Oh, you're not." No, I don't hold big settlement checks, to clients. I don't do personal, and it's not the sexiest type of work on the face of the earth, but I love it and I want all of it. And I I have no, qualms with, and I could, I don't need to, need to be the person who, there's, I guess, vanity driven, as a lawyer, but, so it's funny, but like I said, I tell people I do probate work. I love it. I want all of it. I want to be the number one, we're working to be the unbeatable, probate firm in Missouri, and that resonates because when anybody says the word probate, it's, "Oh, well, how many probate lawyers have they met in the last 2 years? Probably 0."
Yeah.
Right? Or if I said I do probate and personal injury and estate planning, right? When somebody asks that question, you go, "I don't know, I don't remember because, this guy does 3 different things. There's this guy over here does 3 different things. I can't remember who does what." So I think from a marketing perspective, niching down has been, really helpful in growing my network, and will continue to, I think, advance that growth, at least, on maybe a faster timeline, when it comes to, marketing and being that expert in that space.
Yeah. So, as we come to a up on time here, I just want to kind of re-impress upon people, like, think, as you're growing your practice, and especially if you're like thinking about getting started, or, you're a year in or 2 years in, like, really, really sit down and think about what you're trying to build. Like, what do you need in a day? Like, what do you want your day to look like? Like, how critical that stuff is. Like, it sounds kind of woo woo, but it's so important because you can easily spend, 5 years growing a firm that you hate. And so you gotta start at the end in being like, well, I want to be able to spend an hour going for a jog. I don't want to have to get started working until, 10:30 in the morning. I want to be able to go to all of my kids' events, and getting clear on, like, what does your day look like? Who am I working with? How many people am I working with? Like, am I managing? Am I a manager, or am I a doer? Like, what is my role within what I actually like doing? And then work backwards. Like, okay, so I've got this picture. How much money do I need to make to make that happen? That's like a big piece. All right, well, let's say I need to make, I need to take home, what is it? 150, 250 grand, 350, whatever your number is. Get clear on what that is, and be realistic about what that is, and be honest with yourself about what you actually need. And then figure out, okay, well, that's, at a, let's say a 30% profit margin, 50% profit margin, it varies depending on the size of your firm. How many cases am I going to need of this kind of case? And then, all right, well, what kind of marketing tools do I need to generate that many cases per month? And get real clear. And then, what technology tools do I need to help supplement that? Like, I don't know if I can handle that on my own. How much AI should I be using? How much automation technology? When do I need to bring in help? What should I personally be learning? It helps a lot to be able to answer. If you start with the end, it helps to answer the earlier questions a whole lot more. So, and with that,
Yeah, I
go
could
ahead. All right.
I couldn't agree more on that. Just wanted to say that, from a personal standpoint, I probably spent, at least 2 to 3 years early on in my law firm, right? Very early on, walking through the forest blindfolded, right? And not having a clear direction, not having a clear path or a plan of what I wanted. And, I just kind of, I looked around and said, "Oh, okay, well, this is what everybody else is doing, right?" That's not how you should build a
Yeah.
law firm, just like, what the person next to you is doing. It needs to be, you really need to spend the time. So I think, everything you just said there is 100% spot on. And if you're starting out a law firm, or even if you're a couple years in, or even if you're 5 years in or 6 years in, like I am, right? Um, you can always make that
Yeah.
change, right? And start building from now
Yeah.
going forward and implement that change. So, the earlier the better. And, I would be probably twice the size I am now if I had, basically implemented those changes earlier, right? And kind of got more of a vision and focus earlier. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that, um, let us shift to our tips of the week. What do you got for us, John?
So this week I was playing around with, the ChatGPT o1 preview, just because it's really fun and there's a lot of craziness going on there. But I was having it build out and, some PPC campaign stuff. I was just having it, let's write some PPC ads, or let's write an an SEO optimized page on whatever, right? Whatever topic you want,
Yeah.
right? Just to kind of playing with it, see with it. But it was pretty crazy what it was doing. And then I was also, since I have my custom GPT Eleanor, right? I was also asking it to build out SEO optimized pages with Eleanor's database, which is all 100% accurate information. So I'm not getting I'm not getting pages that are built out that are saying like, oh, well, probate in Missouri, you have to locate the will and, it's all this generic general stuff. It's actually my custom GPT, providing the real answers, but doing it in an SEO optimized way.
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool. Check it out. If start using it through the lens of the GPTs or, just any of the ChatGPT 4, the 4.0 or whatever it is, and then the O1 preview. Just use it. Like what are you trying to do marketing wise right now? Do you need help with marketing? Use it to help write stuff for marketing.
Yeah.
And I think it's really fun and it sounds much, much better than it did when it comes to the plain language, right? Before it's like, well, the complexity of the similarities between probate cases determine the outcome of the specific, and now it's just like probate in Missouri is, can be complex. Here are some options that help. You know what I mean? I think it's better. So play with that from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a quick aside about this, I had an interesting comment from Jordan Ostroff, prior guest on the show, and he was talking about expressing some, I don't know what the right word is exactly, but he was commenting on how, there's all these different models and is this going to get really confusing? And what are we going to see when all these companies have their own proprietary models? And I think for a while that might expand. But right now, for anybody out there who's like overwhelmed by all this LLM and AI stuff, to boil it down, all you really need to know about right now is OpenAI is probably the main company you need to know about. They run ChatGPT. They have 3 main models that you should care about. They have 4.0 Mini, which is their cheap, fast, pretty smart model. Great for basic administrative, parsing text and stuff like that, but probably not so good for writing marketing content. Probably not so good for complex reasoning. 4.0 is more expensive. It's the middle lane model. Pretty smart, pretty good. Has voice capability. So that's where you get the voice models that can talk and stuff like that. And then you have O1 Preview that doesn't have the voice model. It can't talk. It's very smart though, and it can reason slowly. It's very expensive. As long as you know that those are the 3 models, 4.0 Mini, 4.0, and O1 Preview, that's all you really need to know right now. And if you want to access and figure out how to use any of them, just, set up your Zapier account, set up your OpenAI account, and start playing around with them. But start with the end in mind. What am I trying to automate? What do I need to use this tool for? And let that determine which model to use, right? Don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it scare you. It's not that complicated. My tip of the week is on this theme of getting more out of the tools you're already using for Google Workspace users out there. And it's also true for Microsoft 365. Those are kind of the 2 camps. But go check out all the different softwares that you're paying for, in your subscription. You may not even realize how many dozens of different softwares are included in your Google Workspace account or your Microsoft 365 account. You've got your documents, your spreadsheets, your email, your chats. Microsoft has Teams, Google has Google Chat, calendars. Google now has a scheduling system that can, in some cases, for some people, replace tools like Calendly. Check out the notes and there's so much packed into those subscriptions that you are probably not even aware is there. If you're trying to fight shiny object syndrome and cut back your tool set, check out what you're already paying for. And you might be amazed what you find. And
that's a great point.
That is it for this week. Guys, thanks for joining us on the program. If you enjoyed the conversation or continue to enjoy our conversations, please leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. That helps other listeners find us. And if you'd like to take the conversation offline, join us in the Legal Tech Collective Facebook group where we'll continue to talk about these things all the time. If you have any questions or concerns or just want to chat tech, we'll be there. All right. That's it for this week, guys. And until next time, John, it was a pleasure chatting as always.
Yeah, it was a great episode. I'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.
You as well. Take it easy.